Good evening, everyone. Chief guest, Dr. SHAHANI MARKUS, keynote speaker, VIDYA JYOTHI, Dr. BANDULA VIJAY, honored guest speakers, session chairs, Chairman and MD Sampath Bank, fellow council members of the Sri Lanka National Chapter of Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World, OWSD for short, President and fellow council members of National Academy of Sciences Sri Lanka, colleagues and participants. I feel truly honored to address you as the founder president of the Sri Lanka National Chapter of OWSD, and I warmly welcome you to this webinar on enhanced entrepreneurship skills for scientists in the new normal environment. Before moving on to webinar details, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to the Sri Lanka National Chapter of OWSD. It's the local representative organization of the OWSD, which is an international body. In fact, it's a program unit of the UNESCO. The national chapter was launched in March 2018 under the auspices of the National Academy of Sciences, with the aim of promoting female participation in science, technology, and innovation, especially to promote women involvement in scientific leadership and decision-making processes, both at national and international levels. Sri Lanka National Chapter acts as a platform to enable networking of scientists, capacity building through training, showcasing role models, and enhancing awareness of opportunities that are out there. It has been an honor and a privilege to take on this responsibility a couple of years back, and it has indeed been a learning experience for me to steer this dynamic and energetic team who have been working tirelessly with a common focus. It is still a young organization, but growing steadily in numbers and in strength. We remain grateful for the guidance and nurturing that we continue to receive from our colleagues at the National Academy of Sciences Sri Lanka, while providing the independence to grow freely under their umbrella. Their inputs have really shaped the course that we have traversed so far. Starting with Dr. Aziz Mubarak and his team, who wholeheartedly supported the launch of this organization, Dr. RANJITH MAHINDAPALA, backed by his council, was a tower of strength during the past 2 years. And the trend is continuing with the current president, Professor PRIYAN, from whom you will hear shortly. The journey, though short, has been very eventful. And these images will help to give you a glimpse of those significant moments over the past couple of years. I strongly encourage you to become a member of this organization. If you are not already one. The information on how to join can be found on the last page of the registration brochure that was sent to you, which will look something like this on the screen. Now, getting back to today's event, the reason we selected this theme, entrepreneurship, for this year is because of the obvious need to promote entrepreneurship for our country's socio-economic development. We all know there's a large role that could be played by the scientists. And we also know that there's an immense potential that remains largely untapped. We even understand where the gaps and what the barriers are. But in spite of all that, we haven't been successful so far in harnessing the strengths to achieve the goals. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this figure. So there's an obvious disconnect between our understanding of the situation and what we see at ground level. Looking at it from a gender perspective, both global and regional figures that you see here indicate that the females do lag behind. Even Sri Lankan figures which I couldn't find, but for small and medium enterprises, it's said to be 25%. The picture will look even gloomier if we focus on female scientist entrepreneurs. The female participation, however, in the labor force is given as 34%. This just indicates the untapped potential and opportunities that are out there. I believe we have a level playing field in this country. I hope this event will act as a trigger to open our minds to the importance of translational research to fulfill countries' needs. To be aware of the possibilities, to learn from those who have succeeded, to know the opportunities available out there, and the support systems that could be tapped to make it happen. Before I end and hand this over to Professor PRIYAN to extend his welcome on behalf of the National Academy, I would like to express my gratitude to the chief guest, keynote, and other speakers for willingly getting on board to share their experiences with us. A special thanks goes to our sponsors, Sampath Bank, especially the chairman and former council member of the National Academy, Professor RANASINGHE, MD, Mr. Nanda Fernando, and his crew for generous sponsorship that enabled all this. Thank you all for joining and have a great evening. Over to you, PRIYAN.
Thank you. Thank you, NADIRA. So, as you heard, the Sri Lanka National Chapter of OWSD works under the auspices of the National Academy of Sciences of Sri Lanka. The Academy was established in 1976, incorporated by an Act of Parliament in 1988, and has around 150 fellows who are elected by their peers. We like to think that we are the counterparts to the Royal Society in the UK, but perhaps we have some way to go in order to achieve a similar stature. Nevertheless, we do various things, one of which is promoting events such as this webinar. Another very significant seminar we had was in 2013 on CKDU, which was attended by all the key stakeholders, and we compiled proceedings of that particular symposium. We also seek to advise and intervene in science-related governance. In the 1980s, we provided a review of the Mahabali Accelerated Program, well before my time in the Academy, of course. In 1999, the Academy provided a critique of the mass-scale exploitation of the Pavala phosphate, the proposed mass-scale exploitation, and we are still voicing our opinion on this subject. And then more recently, in 2018, we endorsed glyphosate as a herbicide for the plantation sector, when in our opinion, it had been inadvisedly banned. So we try to promote science through these kinds of discussions, and also provide opinions on science-related governance. So let me join NADIRA also in welcoming all of you, very eminent panelists that we have, some of them from as far away as Houston in the US. Many of you also from other academies and chapters of OWSD elsewhere in the world. Our own participants from Sri Lanka, fellows of the Academy, members of OWSD. Before I finish, let me just say a little bit about entrepreneurship. Now, entrepreneurship should be actually very close to my heart because I'm an engineer myself, although perhaps somewhat removed from the daily life of an average scientist. Someone is supposed to have said that scientists see things as they are and ask why, while engineers dream of things that never were and ask why not. Well, I don't know how true or otherwise that statement is, but I trust that all of us would be better entrepreneurs after today's workshop. So I will stop there and wish all of ourselves a good webinar, a learning experience through this webinar. And I will hand back to NADIRA to introduce our chief guest.
Thank you, PRIYAN. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. SHAHANI MARKUS, who is a well-known tech entrepreneur with global level experience in the IT industry, government, and academia. She has a bachelor's and master's in computer science and mathematics, and a PhD in computer science from Purdue University, USA. She has co-founded multiple tech companies, both in the US and in Sri Lanka, and these include a Silicon Valley-based company. She has worked as a lead engineer at Precision Markets in New York and a consultant at the IBM P.J. Watson Research Center. She earlier worked as an academic at the University of Moratuwa and also as the head of engineering at Virtusa. She holds many US patents and has co-authored large number of publications as well. And it's a pleasure to invite Shahani to make the presentation. Over to you, Shahani.
Thank you, Nadira. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody hear me and see my presentation?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, good. Let me, without further ado, I'm going to launch here. And this background you see here is when the clear skies were operating, when we were under curfew in Sri Lanka, and I thought it's very apt considering we are talking about the new normal environment. As I mentioned in my synopsis, I want to weave a thread across my personal experiences in order to tell this story. So if you look at, a childhood experience, I was a very avid reader. But beyond the books and, the fiction and so on, I focused a lot on learning or reading about general topics. So for me, the Time and Newsweek magazines, which my parents bought for us, it came every week. I literally read them cover to cover, right? Versus the popular science or astronomy. Now, I don't know why I had that urge to look at more of a worldview or gain a big picture perspective, but it sure did give me amazing exposure. And for the kids of today, you have the internet. When I was growing up, I didn't have even TV. So then going on, as I grew older, I started looking at famous research labs, R&D companies. I guess, I had heard about them from the Time and Newsweek magazines. It was about all these national labs that were there in the USA, NASA, Xerox PARC, that amazing research center, and the Lilly Research Laboratory in Life Sciences. And later on, Microsoft Research, which came into being about 30 years ago, IBM Research and so on. So that was also more about getting exposure, but in particular, it was me trying to understand how research and innovation is done at scale. So all of these activities that I was involved in actually had a huge personal impact on me. It is no doubt that it, started my interest in research and innovation, and it instilled in me this kind of curiosity about creating something new or making something better, doing stuff to make a difference. I had this kind of notion that I wanted to break away from stereotypes. And I knew that I had to start figuring out my own path, primarily because as a young girl growing up in Sri Lanka, going to the Sri Lankan schools, I had a lot of pressure, societal pressure, especially from family. My parents being both physicians, I had this immense pressure to go in their footsteps and do medicine. But my mind was not working like that. And I had this sense that I had to figure out my own path. And it's around, when I was like 16 or 17 that I had this sense that I wanted to be a scientist. So at that time, I started developing an interest in computers and maths. So it was obvious that my academic journey was going to be geared towards computer science and mathematics. And so that's how it all started off. But as I was, starting this academic journey and embarking on it, one thing I realized was, okay, there was that world out there that I had learned about. And I knew that there were severe influences over me, which caused me to narrow my thinking about what I could achieve, who I am, how I think, and what I want. All of those were heavily influenced by societal expectations, the norms that I was growing in, by family, and so on. And this, where I went and did my undergraduate education in the US, and the more I lived in the US, I realized that that was a huge block for me. And I realized by observing the rest of my friends, who grew up in the US, I realized they had a different mindset. Of course, this realization came over time. It was not a aha moment. And unfortunately, I didn't have a coach or a mentor at that time to show me this issue. I realized that over there, a lot of young people understood that they had control over what they should do or could do, and that they in turn could influence outward. So the earlier thinking I had was society was influencing me, it was all inward. But here, now I was beginning to realize that it's actually, I can radiate out. And of course, there is that other red circle all around of everything else that I cannot control. And once I realize those are things I cannot control, I shouldn't get stressed over those. And it's particularly relevant today with the global pandemic. We just use what we can control to navigate through that. So taking a step back, let me actually articulate what this leads to. When you have that other mindset of everything coming towards you, it leads to this kind of thinking where we are always asking ourselves, can I do this? Is it okay to do it? We are heavily influenced by societal expectations. We seek to follow predefined paths and patterns because that's what everyone else is doing and that's what's expected of us. And that generates a lot of doubt, fear, negativity, and we start thinking, I can't because of this, or I can't because of that. But when you switch that thinking and understand that you have control, that things are within your control, and that you can radiate out and influence others, then it instills an I can mindset. It leads, very importantly, it leads a person to accept and assume responsibility. They start dreaming about what they can do or what they want to do, and they become the CEO of their dreams. They assume that responsibility. And in order to do this, you need to continuously go on this path of trying to know yourself. Because as time goes on and as things happen in your life, you keep changing. Change is inevitable. So as you go through life, you have to keep understanding who you are, what you want, understanding the expectations of you. It's a lot of contemplation involved. And once you know all this, once you know your dreams, once you know yourself, you become driven by passion. And then your mindset is, oh, I can try to do this. I can try to do that. And, if something does not work out, it's not a failure. It's like, oh, I tried it. I learned something. Now over to the next thing. So it's an enormous mindset change that drives all of this. So recently, just actually a few weeks ago, somebody asked me if I could start over, what would I do differently? And I know something that I really had problems with was my self-esteem growing up. And so I keep thinking, if I could start over in my career, I would begin by having more self-confidence and self-esteem. And actually, I got more self-confidence and self-esteem, and I began to believe myself once I understood this is the framework, the mind model I should have for myself. Once I understood that, I had the self-confidence and self-esteem. And in fact, I love this quote. I tell it to my kids as well. A bird sitting on a tree is never afraid of the branch breaking because her trust is not on the branch, but on its wings. So always remember to believe in yourself. So now going on to my entrepreneurial journey, once again from personal experience, because now I had a different mindset. I was way more open to taking risks and viewing them as opportunities. I started my first company 15 years ago, soon after I left Virtusa, my role at Virtusa, and I created a company called Foster, which was created to provide open source solutions to governments in Asia. And I realized very soon that that idea was a bit too early. I mean, I tried in Sri Lanka and I realized they were not there yet. And I, of course, went and spoke a lot at the ICT agency, trying to convince them to consider this concept. But the cool part is when I realized that this was not going to work out, I shut the company down, and literally within a week, I was hired as the CTO of the ICT agency because they got exposed to me and they realized, oh, maybe I could help in that realm. I co-founded my second company 7 years ago. The company is called Oxenta. It's a boutique software development services company. And now I am a director of the board of that company. I co-founded my third company 6 years ago, Emojot. I would say that's my baby. I really love that company, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. I am currently, when I started it off, I was the chairperson and CEO. But last year, I realized, considering the growth stage of the company, that I didn't have the experience necessary to guide the company through that growth stage. So I brought in a professional CEO and I moved to the CTO role. So now I'm the chairperson and CTO of that company. And I co-founded my fourth company 3 years ago. That was yet another product company. It's actually based here in Sri Lanka. And it's called Million Spaces. It's a subsidiary of Oxenta, and I'm a board director there as well. So that's the entrepreneurial journey. But now I want to relate this personal experience at Emojot to this mindset. So I was at University of Moratuwa teaching in the computer science and engineering department, and in particular I love these final year projects that the students are doing, and I used to give a lot of my ideas for those projects, and I used to set the goals and targets for the students, and as you can imagine, the students very easily achieved those goals and most often exceeded them. And the goals are of the nature of, okay, you should have one conference paper accepted in Sri Lanka, another conference paper published outside Sri Lanka, and of course articulate the practical implications and usage of the project you're implementing and doing, the research you're doing. So there was no doubt there was talent and capability in abundance, but one of the, my expectations when I gave these ideas to the students was that they would set up a company at the end of their final year project to commercialize the project. But after a couple of years and after losing quite a few ideas, my success rate in that was 0. So obviously I had to do something different, right? And when I, the reason when I studied the problem, I realized the problem is because the students had that same mindset that I had when I was in Sri Lanka, growing up in Sri Lanka. They were all influenced by society. It was all coming in at them, and they were almost trapped and they couldn't make that break. So in order to, think the different way, I knew I had to start that thinking. That was the only thing that was within my control, because I couldn't change society for the students, but I could change how I approach this problem. And that's exactly what I did. So I learned from that, and I did an entire redo. And that is, all senior lecturers are allowed to have 4 final year research projects. So I had my 4 final year research projects where I had given the ideas, and I decided to run a competition amongst these 4 teams. And the winning project, I told them at the beginning of the final year, research initiative, I told them that the winning project, I would come out as a lecturer and I will co-found a company with those students. So that's the promise I gave them. And that is how Emoja was born. So it came out of a research project, and we figured out how to commercialize it. And before I quickly wrap up, actually, out of the 4 students who did this winning research project, which was research on sentiment analysis, I must say that only 50% of the students, 2 students who are both first classes from University of Moratuwa, Andun and Sachinta, are the ones who joined with me to start the company. The other 2 students joined industry. So I want to end up with an inspirational experience. This is the Sahana story, and I thought it was very apt considering the time that we are living through right now, the global pandemic. You may recall, I know you recall, on December 26th in 2004, this region faced a tsunami that changed everybody's lives forever. There was massive physical destruction, and there were immediately many relief efforts going on. In the midst of all of this, by December 27th, refugee camps were up. There were many aid collection points. There was loading and dispatching of aid trucks, medical camps. I mean, there were frenzied attempts to help. I was at Virtus at that time, and the senior management, we got together and we, I'm sorry, was that? Okay. We started having discussions on how we could help the country. And the suggestions were around, okay, we can give money to do aid camps, we can send aid and so on. But then I suggested, why don't we do something that only we can do because we are IT professionals? And that's when we had that germination of an idea to build software to help this situation. And we did some research, found that such software did not exist freely. So we thought we should build open source software and we should let any IT professional anywhere in the world, particularly in Sri Lanka, to contribute their skills. And of course, then the next question was, what do we start building? So at that time, I happened to know Lalit Veeratunga, who was the secretary to the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka at the time. So I gave him a phone call, and he had just got off a helicopter in Trincomalee. He answered the phone, and I told him what we were thinking about, and I asked him, what is the greatest need? And boom came the answer, we need a people registry, because there are so many people who have lost their lives and so many people who are in refugee camps. So that's when on December 29th, there was an intense developer meeting at the ICT Agency of Sri Lanka, and that is the birth of the world's first open source disaster management system called SHAHANI. In the early days of SHAHANI, we built many components. It expanded way beyond the missing person registry. It was frantically developed within weeks. We had major releases every day. More than 80 people contributed in that first phase. And in that first week, development happened 24 hours a day. Then, of course, once the panic kind of went away and things settled down, a group of others, and I was not involved anymore after that. It got a life of its own. They developed Sahana Phase 2. They re-architected, redesigned it in a systematic manner. And Sahana Phase 2 is now developed, not just Phase 2, now it's gone through many phases. Sahana is developed in many, whenever there is a major disaster, it is developed in those countries all over the world. There is a separate foundation that just runs Sahana, and basically Sahana was Sri Lanka's gift to the world. So in conclusion, I would want to say, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful and committed people can change the world. We were all Sri Lankans in Sri Lanka, and we did this. And in conclusion, I want to say, it was a huge change for me when I realized this, different way of thinking about myself and what I could do. And if you guys also take it on, keep in mind that as you go on an entrepreneurial journey or try anything entrepreneurial, don't worry. I love these quotes. Don't worry about being successful, but work towards being significant. Do that significant work, and the success will naturally flow. And in this day and age, Laurie Grenier, a famous entrepreneur, in her words, entrepreneurship is the way we can take control of our lives in a tough economy. We did it during when the tsunami hit, and we can do it, continue to do it now in this new normal. So don't be afraid to shine, because all of you scientists who are listening today, the world, Sri Lanka definitely needs your light, and I would say the world needs your light. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shahani. If you, I believe you have stopped sharing the screen.
Yes. Do you want me to share the screen?
No. This is from Professor PRIYAN. If you can start answering that, I can get you the other questions. Can you see?
Yes. Okay, his question is, many scientists may take some sorts of risks, like choosing new research areas. Taking financial risks would be more difficult. So that's a very, very good point, right? And this is where, we have to get rid of this thinking that doing something entrepreneurial involves taking a financial risk, because it does not, right? The financial, you need the financial strength and so on at certain points in the journey. But at the beginning, even in the US, even in Sri Lanka, as you start off something, it's a matter of bootstrapping. Now, in certain scientific areas, because you have to buy equipment and so on, obviously you need some finances just to get off the ground. And that is where I think even in Sri Lanka, there are lots of grants, awards given, lots of places where you can go to get the financial funding you need. Or the next thing you could do, and this is always, you have to think of what's within your control, right? So you have an idea, you have a concept, and you feel very passionately about it, right? You have to start thinking, okay, what is the impact of this? Where does it impact the most? And then you start looking at the companies that are out there that would need this kind of technology, and go and pitch it to them. It doesn't cost anything to really make a PowerPoint presentation and start talking. And that's what you have to do. You have to just keep talking, pitching, and influence others and make them believers. And then they can join hands with you to take it forward wherever finances are needed. I hope those are just some ideas. I hope that answers your question.
There are two questions in the Q&A session. I'll try to copy it. If you also can see, I wonder whether.
Yeah, so the question is it possible to be a successful entrepreneur in an academic environment as it exists in Sri Lanka? Well,
that is actually my question, but you can start answering while I type the other one.
Okay. So, we started Emojot 6 years ago. I don't think the academic environment in Sri Lanka has changed massively since then. And it was possible, right? It required two others, university students who were willing to take that risk of, all their friends, batchmates went on to high-paying jobs, and they instead had to live on a very, very slim budget, and that happened for a couple of years, right? But while they were doing that, they were part founders. They had ownership in the company that they were building. And today, 6 years later, they are in a very different position. In fact, they are both now directors of the company, and they've, just gone speeding ahead of their own batchmates. I truly believe that when there is a challenge, right, and obviously when you're trying to do something entrepreneurial in any kind of environment, be it whether it's academic or any other environment, there are always challenges. But just like the way we approach, as scientists, we approach any challenge and we try to solve it. So you've got to try to solve that, right? And you have to think of out of the box, solutions here. And that's kind of the solution I used when I lost the many ideas in the beginning and then switched. My question is how much, I'm going on to the second one, how much was it difficult for you to work in your country scenario than in Silicon Valley? Actually, it was not difficult at all. I actually live in Silicon Valley, but the wonderful part of that was, in Silicon Valley, there are so many meetups and so on. It was like, it was like jumping into the deep end. I kept going to these meetings and learning how to be an entrepreneur. So I was like a sponge. I learned and learned and learned because I didn't know anything. I was an academic who decided to start a company. So I learned as much as possible. And whatever I learned, I kept trying to transfer to the other co-founders who were in Sri Lanka. And, we just navigated the way we knew. Looking back, are there things we could have done differently? Of course, right? But this was our journey, and we keep making mistakes, we keep correcting them. So that's the journey. And I wouldn't say it was any more difficult over here than in Silicon Valley. There are rules and regulations here when you start a company in terms of labor laws and so on, but you just got to know them and then act accordingly. Are we done with time, or do I have time for one more answer, Nadira?
Yeah, I think you can take this one.
Right. Pursuing computer science, that is a 9-to-5 job. If you're interested in pursuing an entrepreneurial journey in Sri Lanka, take that first step. You own it, right? That is the entire point. That's what I was trying to tell about the mindset change. Now, I started my that second entrepreneurial sprint when I was I was 48 years old, right? So it's never too late. It's never too early. It's the time is when you start it. That's the right time. So sometimes people do that 9-to-5 job because of certain expectations that they have. Once they start realizing and looking within themselves, they know they have to satisfy certain obligations, and that's why. But you know, it does not mean that that is a forever scenario. There will come a time, and if you keep thinking about it, you keep dreaming about it and become the CEO of your dreams, then you can make it happen.
Thank you very much, Shahani, for your inputs, for answering the questions so well. Thank you. I'm sure all of us have learned a lot from you. Thank you so much. Now we'll have a very short commercial break, after which Professor PRIYAN Dias will introduce the keynote speaker.
Foreign currency account that can be opened the fastest. The Sampath Personal Foreign Currency Account, bringing your goals closer to you. Sampath Bank, we present your future.
So let me join Nadira in thanking Shahani myself. At one time, Shahani was a colleague of mine at the University of Moratuwa. We also had a mutual friend who was a classmate of mine and with whom she studied, I think, at Purdue University. But ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to welcome our keynote speaker, VIDYA JYOTHI Dr. BANDULA VIJAY, who is the Ambassador for Science and Technology and Innovation for Sri Lanka. He is also more relevant to this program, the CEO of 3 companies based in Houston, Texas, in the area of medical devices. He is one of the most eminent inventors of medical devices, having more than 28 US and international patents. So as you will see from his talk, he is a scientist, engineer, educator, and serial entrepreneur who has developed a variety of interventional cardiovascular devices, such as balloon angioplasty catheter, vascular stents, local drug therapy procedures, heart imaging devices and procedures, and a whole host of other medical devices and concepts. He will, of course, be speaking in a more contextual sense because the title of his presentation is Post-Pandemic Economic Vitality Through Innovation. So, Dr. Vijay, please, Bandula.
Well, good morning, or good afternoon or evening in Sri Lanka. Let me start my presentation with a quotation from Albert Einstein. The true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. I think we just heard a very inspirational, elegantly presented presentation by Dr. Shahani about character building. And it is extremely true for all of us, including myself. And those doubts that we had in Sri Lanka, it was easier for me to overcome those after I arrived here in the United States. Professor KARUNAWEERA, Professor Dias, Dr. MARKUS, Dr. MAHINDAPALA, esteemed panel members, and dear friends. Thank you for having me participate in this webinar and share my thoughts about what it would take to propel Sri Lanka in this post-pandemic era through innovation. Because my talk is about innovation, and so I'm going to focus very much on the term innovation. And as such, let me discuss or define or elaborate the meaning of the word innovation. But before that, I also want to bring another word, that is invention. So what is an invention? Invention is something that you have come up with a new concept, original concept, that has never been done ever anywhere in the world, that has never been published in the scientific or non-scientific literature, or not in practice anywhere in the world. If you have come up with this concept, and if you meet what we call the doctrine of equivalence test, then it becomes an invention. So what is an example of an invention? Then there are so many. So I'll give you something like, let's say a transistor that was invented many, many, many years ago. Or if you, from my own field, if we discuss about, say, measuring cardiac output using a catheter placed in the heart, that would be an invention in early mid-1970s. So that would be an invention. What would be an innovation? Now, this difference is a very interesting difference, and it's a very fine difference. Innovation is something where you have solved a problem to existing need in the world. You have come up with a new solution using existing knowledge or a combination of existing knowledge, part of which could be an invention, and it has not been done anywhere else in the world, has not been published in scientific or non-scientific literature, or not in practice anywhere in the world, then that is an innovation. So there is a difference between the two terms. Sometimes it will be difficult to figure out, is this an invention or innovation? So let's give you an example. Now, we all know about Uber. Now, Uber is a very good example of innovation. Uber was developed using existing knowledge of software. So, therefore, Uber is considered an innovation, and there's so many that, of course, we don't have a list or talk about all these. So, as our topic today is about how we can use innovation to kickstart the Sri Lankan economy post-pandemic era, so let me only focus about innovation. Now, in the recent past, there have been some discussions about economic growth doing other things. Like, let's say Sri Lanka imports a million cell phones a year. If you manufacture those cell phones in Sri Lanka, of course, you provide employment, and as well as you will save a lot of foreign exchange. That helps the country economically. So we're not going to talk about things like that. So let's not forget that also does exist. And therefore, these are also important. Now, coming back to innovation, we have to figure out what is it that we need to do in order to propel our country as a global powerhouse in innovation. To do that, one of the things I have mentioned before in my talks in Sri Lanka is we have to brand ourselves. Branding is extremely important. For example, for those of us who live in the United States, people who look like me or think that Indian, they have branded themselves in IT and as medical doctors. So branding is important. Now, if we think countries like Israel, Singapore, South Korea, or Taiwan, they have branded themselves in certain areas of science and technology. Electronics or medical devices or shipbuilding and various other things. So it is very important to brand ourselves so that we can reach the market significance. So if we do not brand ourselves and if we develop something, that stays within our island, then nobody knows about it. So therefore, very important that people know that we are good at this thing. Now, have we branded ourselves in other things or anything at all? The answer to that is yes. When people talk about Sri Lanka, they know very well that we are very good in tea. We are the best in tea in the world. We have a beautiful country, so we are very well known for tourism. So we have branded ourselves in tourism. And we also have branded ourselves in cricket. So those countries that that follow cricket, they know Sri Lanka has a very good cricket team. So we have branded ourselves in cricket. Now, in the recent past, I'm happy to say that we have branded ourselves in few other things as well. For example, the electric car Vega, or the development of the graphene, or the development of nanotechnology-based fertilizers. So these are areas we are in the process of branding ourselves. So our journey has started. And so we are very hopeful, and I'm very encouraged to see that this sort of thing has started happening in Sri Lanka. Of course, it is a starting of the journey, and we must continue. So what is it that we have to do in order to accomplish this noble initiative? Most importantly, we have to have a national commitment that we want to be a leader in certain areas of science. So how do we do that? I think the intellectuals in Sri Lanka should get together and into a room and say, hey, what can we do so that we can be good at whatever is it that we chose to do in science? So I think that has to take place. Something went wrong. I don't know whether you can. I think I'm back again.
You're back, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Am I on again?
Yes, we can see you, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, I'm okay then. So what is it that, what conditions or what do we need, the precursors, in order for us to brand ourselves? We have to decide as a nation, by a group of individuals meeting together and select those areas that we can be really good at. And once we do that, then we should follow through with funding and providing the skill set that is needed. So these two things, the brain power or the skill set and the funding, are extremely important in order to develop a technology-based economy or innovation-based economy. So do we have it? Yes, we do. We are very blessed with the brain power. Sri Lanka, for reasons of genetics maybe, we are some of the brainiest people in the world. We have a depth in intellectuality. In the last several years, I have visited Sri Lanka and met with a number of my colleagues in Sri Lanka, and I obviously must say, I realized, because I didn't go to school in Sri Lanka, that I met some of the most smart people, brilliant people that I have met in Sri Lanka. So the brain power obviously is available in Sri Lanka. Then in addition to the brain power, we also need funding. Now funding can come from different means. Now I'm sure there's going to be presentations about that later on, but in addition to the government, we can have private fundings, venture funding, and we can have funding of public-private partnerships and so on. So there are so many different ways of getting funding. So having the skill set and funding are the two most important things in order to come out with the innovations that will help us economically. Now, having said that, I want to bring a few very essential criteria that are necessary in order to make this happen. And these are the innovation culture, innovation infrastructure, teamwork, and education. So let me talk about the two easy things first: innovation infrastructure and the teamwork. Innovation infrastructure is that we should be able to provide some maker space or incubator space for those startup companies, entrepreneurs all around Sri Lanka. I would suggest maybe have like 10 or so incubators around the country, and probably these should be near the universities. When it is near the universities, it would help the entrepreneurs to tap into the knowledge base that is readily available in the university. In addition to that, the university academics, the professors, should be able to participate in this startup environment. And we should make it easy for the university academics to participate so that they can contribute with the intellectual property. And we should talk to the policymakers so that we bring policies that will make it easier to do. Therefore, the professors do not have too much obligation to the university as far as the intellectual property. Now, that is a major issue in Sri Lanka, and I have to admit it is some sort of a problem in the United States as well. The next thing is we need to develop this culture of teamwork. No entrepreneur can think of this idea, develop the prototype, manufacturing, quality control, sales, marketing, and manage the company by himself. So you need a team of people who would participate in to propel his company to the marketplace. But teamwork starts not after you finish the education at the university, but it starts in the elementary school. So we have to indoctrinate our young people into teamwork starting from the kindergarten. Of course, they are not going to do it on their own, so we have to have a system and policies and an education system that promotes teamwork. So when you give a problem to the students, you don't ask each one to solve the problem by themselves, but by a team of 3 or 4 or 5 students. And that should continue all the way to the university, and then subsequently to at the university level. What I meant to say was subsequently to the workplace. So teamwork is very well practiced in sports. When one wins, all will win is the mantra. And those of you who are athletes and who have been in the sports, you understand the value of teamwork. The next is the innovation culture. Now, when it comes to innovation culture, this is absolutely necessary. If anyone, any country, if they want to make a mark in innovation. And when we talk about the word innovation culture, the country that comes to my mind is the United States. Since World War II, 70 plus years, just about every new development, every new concept that changed the way we live in the world, in the entire world, came from the United States. It doesn't matter whether it was the transistor or the computers, the internet, or communication devices, or the satellites, all these things started in the United States. So innovation culture is the reason why it happened in the United States. From my experience for living and working here for more than 45 years, I know that my colleagues, my students, my employees, everyone wants to do something different, something new. The culture of wanting to do something different and something new is so entrenched in this American culture. And that is why that people who have barely not so much of education has gotten out to do things that have changed the world. I'm talking here about Microsoft, about Dell computers, about Apple, and even Facebook. Now, these are folks who during their college days, university days, they got out, they started these companies. Look how big these companies are and how they change the world. The most important thing is these companies make such a great impact in the way we live in the world. So those concepts came because we have the culture of innovation. We have to start developing this culture of innovation, not after we finish the education at the university level, but we should do it again, like I said earlier, starting from grade school. The next is education. Education, we are top in education in Sri Lanka. Our universities are among the best. Our university graduates have done tremendously internationally. Example, Dr. SHAHANI MARKUS. So we have no doubt we have very good education. But at the same time, we also have to adopt some of the ideas that have propelled United States into this leadership by adapting some of the ideas, some of the practices they have used in the education in the United States. Namely, the problem-based learning, thinking, critical thinking, active learning, and making the student think through the whole process than simply giving this material to memorize and later on we ask these questions so that we know that they have been able to reproduce. So we should get away from that side of concept. And free education, absolutely, is the crown jewel in our country. While I'm the flag carrier for free education, I'm also the flag carrier for the freedom of education. And that's also very important. We need a larger number of people educated in STEM subjects in order to propel our country into the leadership in global standing in innovation. We are sometimes less than 7 or 8%. That's not enough. We need more. So I could go on and talk more and more about what it would take. And with this limited time, I am going to conclude this by saying something I said before in 2018 in my keynote speech at Vietnam, that no brain born to this soil should be wasted without making it contribute to the economy and prosperity of Sri Lanka. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Bandula. Now, I am going to follow NADIRA's example and try to share this share these questions on PowerPoint so that you can see it easily as well. Maybe you can take it in this order or whatever order you want to. Can you see it? What is the level of recognition for innovations done by students, especially in rural settings in Sri Lanka? This is asked by Sonali Gunasekara.
I think when we see these innovations coming out from Sri Lanka, we have to have some system where we give them a helping hand. I was approached about 2 or 3 weeks ago by someone from Matale district who have come up with a concept in the treatment of COVID patients. It's a wonderful concept, and I have tried to help and making good some sort of right connections in order to propel his idea. So we have to build a bridge between the young innovators in Sri Lanka to those who are the policymakers so that they can make this happen. Now, okay. Somebody asked a question.
Yeah.
Somebody asked a question about business studies.
That's right. You can take that one. Yes. Yeah. How important business studies is. Yes.
I think this is one of the most important questions. I should have talked about this during my speech, but one of the most important things is a broad-based education. I'm again going to talk about US education system. In the US education system, everything is very broad. We do not divide students at the 8th grade or 9th grade to science, arts, engineering, medicine. Students who go to university do biochemistry or physics, they still continue to learn economics, political science, social science, business studies, statistics, and all sorts of things. Students who go into other streams in arts, they also continue to learn sciences, business, and other subjects. So you might say you do not learn deeply in any subject, but you have an exposure to all the important subjects. So making this education broad, which include business and marketing knowledge, is a very important part for the entrepreneur. Good entrepreneurs and innovators understand the economy, understand society, understand politics. So it makes it possible for them to come up with an idea that would make sense for that environment, for that time in the ecospace. So therefore, I think this broad-based education, which includes business and marketing knowledge, is extremely important.
All right, thank you very much. Can we move on to an? There is one participant who is saying, actually, Professor Attalage, who is saying that he has asked a question during registration. So I am going to ask the organizers to see whether they can track that question down by Professor Rahul Attalage. So while they are tracking the question down, can you answer these questions? Actually, I put up these questions when I found there were no questions coming. So see whether you can tackle some of these ones. The first one is about cultural reasons, and the second one is also about culture in a way.
Yeah, the cultural reason is also a very significant component. I think Dr. Shahani mentioned something that really very dear to my heart, because even my parents were school teachers, principals, and so on. So they wanted myself to be an educator, but then whereas I didn't become an educator until later in life. Once I finished everything, I became an educator. So I think the culture plays a very important role. When you grow up in Sri Lanka, you say, oh, you have to become an engineer or doctor or scientist. And so students who are kind of put on a rail track to go to that direction where they go. And that is, I think, like Dr. Marcus said, that's not a prudent thing to do, and that will create innovators. So in my own experience with my own children, I found that there's nothing I could do or I wanted to do to tell them to do what I wanted them to do. So they did whatever they want to do. So therefore, I think the culture plays a very important role.
Okay, I think we still have a little bit of time. This last question on the screen here by Hermail De Silva. This is a politically loaded question. Maybe you can try to tackle it.
I think we, the entrepreneurs, we should kind of stay away from politics. Basically,
the question is about political stability. How important is political stability? I mean, in political instability, can one still be an entrepreneur? That's the question, I think, yeah.
Yes, I understand. Okay, so we can't use this political instability as a means to say, well, you know, it's too risky to become an entrepreneur. I think you should close your eyes to political instability. But entrepreneur depends on the market conditions. If there's a need in the market, then you will do whatever that you have to do in order to meet the needs of the market. Whether one party or the other party is in power. Now, obviously, as you probably know, we are going through a real big upheaval politically in the United States. That doesn't stop me developing my products. So I just keep continuing to develop my products and try to bring it to the marketplace. So we should be oblivious to this, what is happening in the political systems.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Maybe this could be the last question because I think we are just coming up to time. I think the question is from Yunus Imran about which form of entrepreneurship model is best for a developing country, private public or private public people. I'm not sure.
I think this is a very good question because you know, this is something that has crossed my mind about this funding. When we have these grants given, with a public-private partnership. And even in the United States, this is something that I think is not quite right the way we are doing it. When the government funds a project, I think the government should take a stake in that company. So even if you loan money to a startup company, which means the government loans the money or government funds the money, they should take some interest, or let the company start paying it back when they have come to a time they are able to pay back the money they borrowed. Why is this paying back important? So it's kind of like giving the responsibility. If you get the money and you know the money is one way street, then your seriousness of developing and trying to pay it back will be very different than when you know that you have nose to the grinding wheel and that you have to pay it back. So I think that sort of concept should be adapted. We don't have that here either. So I think for Sri Lanka, the NSF should start thinking that yes, plus the fund that you use to fund these developments will be sustainable if the startup companies start eventually paying back into the fund.
Right. So I'm going to tax you with one last question, because the question is from a member of the Academic Council, so I can't ignore his question. This is from Professor Rahul Attalage. I haven't been able to actually put it on the screen. Maybe I can. Okay, here goes an attempt. I'll remove this one. So this is why we haven't performed so well in the past compared to countries of other similar economies, although we understand the need for entrepreneurship and things like that. Why haven't we been able to perform in the past?
I think this is probably the question that I was hoping somebody would ask so that I can give my answer. And I'm very passionate about this because I think we have to start a system of educating our kids to solve problems. We have to start this in probably like in the elementary school, second grade or kindergarten, asking them to solve problems. And having my children grow up here, I know how it is happening in this country when they're little. I mean, the questions they ask, the children in the first or second grade, they are very challenging. And once you teach the students to do problem solving, to do the entire education from kindergarten all the way through university, they are used to solving problems. So when it comes to inventions and innovations, basically we are solving a problem that already exists in this world. So if you have the skill to solve problems, then you naturally are able to solve problems that you have to solve once you get out of the university and start your place. Now, if you look at some of these major corporations, the 10 largest companies in the world are in the United States. They are in the Silicon Valley for most part, 1 or 2 in Houston, some in New York. They are worth $5 trillion. And they're bigger than most of the countries in the world. Now, how did this happen? Because they solved a very simple problem. And did anyone think that Facebook would be so big that it would solve some problems that people needed? Okay, so this is very important to understand what is it that the society, the world needs, and then solve that problem. Fax machine is quite different. Fax machine was developed and made it's a need. So there was no need. People did not know there was a need like the fax machine. But once the fax machine was developed, they created the need, and look what happened to the fax machine. So likewise, it's solving a problem. You can wake up one morning and say, why not I solve this problem? But in order to solve the problem, you have to have that experience, training, culture of solving the problem. So I think we have to adapt this problem solving from the very beginning.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bandula Vijay. Thank you very much. That's a great note to end on, inculcating problem solving in all our students and things like that. So once again, we are going to have a short break, and there will be a commercial. We need to be very grateful to our sponsors, Sampath Bank. So we will hear something about what they have to tell us. And after those 2 great talks for the first part of the session, Dr. Ranjith Mahindapala will take over. He is the immediate past president of the National Academy of Sciences, and he will look after the session where we have many panelists speaking on various practical ways probably in which we can put these ideas into practice. Okay, so over to the organizers to do the message from the sponsors.
Since opening our doors, Sampath Bank has continued to revolutionize Sri Lanka's banking sector with a unique portfolio of products, services, and unmatched dedication. Nearly 3 decades later, we stand as one of Sri Lanka's most trusted banks. At Sampath Bank, we never lose sight that this trust is an indication of the immense confidence our customers have placed in us, which is why we continue to strive forward, developing the best products and services, leading the way in ICT banking solutions, making our customers' lives that much more convenient. All your banking needs completed from the comfort of your home, or even when you're traveling the world, so you can rest easy knowing that Sampath Bank has got you covered. With our ever-expanding ATM and branch network, our customers are ensured of easy access anywhere in Sri Lanka. And with our dynamic currency converter, the convenience of transacting extends around the world. Our foreign currency exchange ATMs, which are operational 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, convert your US dollars and euros into Sri Lankan rupees swiftly and without a hassle. We know you have a busy schedule and your time is valuable to us, which is why, to accommodate you, our cash deposit facility operates at all hours. Providing our customers with 365-day banking convenience. But that's not all. We've always looked towards the future and contributed to our nation's development. At Sampath Bank, we believe that the quality of service we provide is only as good as our team itself. Our solid HR model ensures developing leaders at all levels and retaining our competent team of professionals in our journey towards excellence. Armed with passion and dedication, the Sampath team continues to be at the forefront of numerous community strengthening initiatives, such as our Entrepreneurship Development Program, which is at the core of our CSR vision. We believe that it is this dedication exercised in every area of our operations that has yielded us unprecedented success in our financial performance. The reason behind the many awards bestowed upon us and the growing trust of our customers in everything we do. As we keep moving forward and providing advanced digital banking solutions, our main aim will always be to make our customers' lives simpler and better. Sampath Bank, we present your future.
So I think Ranjith is going to take over.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, great.
Yes,
we can see
yes,
you, we
very
can
well.
hear you. Yes.
Thank you. Good evening. Just at the outset, I'd like to warmly welcome our 6 distinguished panelists who will add value to today's discussion on enhancing entrepreneurship skills. They follow 2 excellent presentations by Dr. Markus and Dr. VIJAY. The panelists will hopefully expand on the approaches that were already presented. Dr. Markus presented her philosophy, if I may call that, on creating something new and entrepreneurial attitude, while Dr. VIJAY, who has actually been an entrepreneur from his school days, dealt on innovations and leadership, branding, and elucidating on inventions and innovations and the need for incubators. At this point, I just would like to take a minute to look at the innovation scenario here in Sri Lanka. Immediately, when you talk of entrepreneurship, our thoughts are with investments, and indeed we are talking about how best we can do our investments, engaging with the private sector and so on. Sometimes we do not think of some of the key scientific innovations and developments funded by the government for simply for betterment of our lives. One example is the developments and of new rice varieties, not only in Sri Lanka, but also in our other parts of the region. Now, about 30 or 40 years ago, our traditional rice varieties gave us a harvest of about 1 metric ton per hectare. And today, with the new varieties that have been developed by our rice research scientists, we get 6 to 7 tons of metric tons of per hectare. These are tremendous achievements, but has not been given the due recognition as in the case of high-tech developments or innovations as we call it today. Yet, we are very happy that we are self-sufficient in rice, and so is our neighbors in South Asia. Now, this brings to the fore the research culture in Sri Lanka. The key question I have is that, do we lack entrepreneurial attitude? In my own assessment, our research are not demonstrating this particular behavior or attitude adequately. And with those few opening remarks, I would like to introduce our distinguished panelists. We start with Ms. CHATHURI RANASINGHE, who is a solicitor, attorney at law and notary public, and the chief executive officer of the law firm CHATHURI RANASINGHE Associates. She's also an agriculturist and is currently the chairperson of Women's Chamber of Industry and Commerce. She has a wealth of knowledge and experience on startup business. She will be followed by Mr. HEMINDA JAYAWEERA, who is an electronics engineer and an innovator. He started a number of ventures on his own. Currently, he is the Chief Operating Officer of the Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology, where reference was made by Dr. VIJAY. Recently, he won the prestigious Eisenhower Fellowship. Then we have Mr. SHALEN De Silva from US, who is an investment banker and a health tech entrepreneur dedicated to improving access to healthcare. He's the founder and CEO of Vincia Health in the US and has been the winner of Harvard President's Innovation Challenge Alumni Venture Track. Then we will have Mr. DEEPAL De Silva, who is the Deputy General Manager, Branch Banking of Sampath Bank, with extensive experience in supporting scientific entrepreneurship. Sampath Bank, as you heard, is also the sponsor of this event. They will be followed by two panelists from the government institutions which support scientific research. Firstly, we have Mr. JANAKA KARUNASENA, who is the Principal Scientific Officer and the head of the Technology Division of the National Science Foundation of Sri Lanka. And NFS has been supporting technology development and startup for scientists. The final panelist would be Ms. Manisha Rajapaksa, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Research Council of Sri Lanka, which has been funding private-public partnerships to link research and development needs of the private sector. Now on logistics, each speaker will have a short 10-minute intervention. And after the third presentation, there will be a Q&A session where questions from the audience will be presented to the three panelists. I would now like to invite Ms. CHATHURI RANASINGHE, please.
Thank you, Dr. Ranjith Mahindapala. Greetings to all. The COVID-19 pandemic brought the world on its knees for many reasons. Primarily to pray for the safety of us, the people of Sri Lanka and all across the globe, far and wide. As we battle with the thought of this unknown invisible virus, which within a short while established that everything that we believed in was now at stake. Life the way we knew may never be the same. The so-called new normal is here to stay. We have to accept that the best choice is to move on and adapt to the change. Businesses were thrown in challenges that were difficult to comprehend, yet was important to face. We have to use unique ideas just to stay afloat. Startups operating in this environment should think differently. Several months into this challenge, we see the different approaches and fresh thinking has brought enough energy among those who got affected to search for new ways. Prior to the COVID-19, allowing people to work from home was not a concept many ever discussed. Today, they see the merit of allowing people the freedom to work from home. It is limiting the time wasted on the road, cost of transport, and provides the opportunity to be more with our family. This method is very useful for the female entrepreneurs who strive to juggle several roles at the same time. Also for aspiring homemakers, this allows hope. In the period of COVID-19, it was remarkable to observe some of the members from the Women's Chamber of Industry and Commerce embrace the new opportunities. Entrepreneurs in garment and handloom industry started manufacturing masks, gloves, face shields, personal protective equipment. Some ventured to manufacture sanitary items such as hand sanitizers, portable sinks with foot pedals. Footwear manufacturer came out with a sanitized rubber rug. Ones with knowledge on information and technology set up the businesses of e-commerce platforms. Some with vehicles ventured to deliver medicine, food, essential items. Flower growers and suppliers ventured to market vegetables and fruits, so on and so forth. They diversified. In Sri Lanka, we also saw numerous examples of innovative efforts, from making robots to helping in the hospitals, new and safe ways to conduct PCR tests, new kinds of stethoscopes, redirecting of businesses to answer the many a demand. It was also seen that car manufacturers in the USA, like Ford, General Motors, and Tesla, diverting to manufacture ventilators. With the onset of the COVID-19, Sri Lankan government stopped the importation of many products and items, which caused the opening of many new markets for the need of very many locally manufactured products and agricultural produce. For the success of your new and emerging opportunity, you have to maintain quality with the usage of good raw material and also obtaining the required SLSI standardization. New opportunities for business and startups in the new normal have been thrown up understandably, chiefly in the health sector. Automated innovative devices and solutions necessary in meeting and combating the virus. Use of artificial intelligence by biomedical engineers. 3D printing, the use of nanotech and other digital technologies. The use of drones to deliver medicine to hospitals, telemedicine appointments, etc. The pandemic has shown that technically abled education is in the new horizon, which offers opportunities for educational and technical startups everywhere. There is a need for new technologies and tools for virtual web conferencing, meetings to enable organizations to communicate with their employees, clients, vendors, suppliers, and other partners, or even family and friends to meet up. Meeting this new need, Zoom Technologies, the owner of the virtual platform Zoom, we are using today to reach out to you all, was a success. With the COVID-19 social distancing culture, Zoom's market cap has risen to 32 billion US dollars. Founder of Zoom, Eric Yuan, is an academic entrepreneur. Out there in the world, there are many scientists who have moved to be successful entrepreneurs, making use of their academic knowledge and experience. I like to draw your attention to the female scientist from the United Kingdom, Dr. Carla Louise Brown, who after her PhD, leaving the academia, became an entrepreneur, launching the company Game Doctor Limited, an educational technology company that develops games and apps on STEM and microbiology. She was listed on the Forbes 30 under 30 list in 2017. She, in an interview to the American Association for the Advancement of Science, stated that COVID lockdown gave her the opportunity to focus in developing a new educational game about the new coronavirus. Thus, to seek for new great opportunities, you have the chance to scan the current environment and look at areas which can benefit from your specializations. Creativity and innovation will allow you to come up with ideas that can help improve everything we do. Rarely does openings like this emerge. Getting the best out of this in our own hands using our academic knowledge and wisdom. Startups have emerged as key drivers of the economic growth and job creation and as catalysts for innovation, especially during the months of the pandemic. It is amazing how the startups have agility on their side as against the traditional organizations. It is observed where startups have offered digital products and services which can be easily adapted to the changing environment. To give an example, Uber, Airbnb, WeWork, the co-working space, were founded in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. The new normal world is bound to be a different world. Change will be inevitable. Thus, the entrepreneurs have to adapt to the changes proactively. Some services or products of the COVID-19 may not have the same demand. We have to be ultra conscious and value creation too. One advantage new startups would have is that all business activities have been under stress due to the pandemic, with low demand and being in difficult financial straits. Therefore, new startups will find a level playing field in which good instincts and business acumen would enable them to get ahead and earn a niche for themselves in the market. Startups to achieve a success in developing a business from scratch requires a lot of challenge with informed decisions to be made, enabling you to move through a successful pathway. The decision making for this journey commences from crafting of a sound business plan for the identified business. You have to research and identify the areas where the opportunities lie and what exactly is needed. Thereafter, there is a need to identify and understand the customers, changing customer behavior such as preferences for online shopping, etc., needs and how they should be served, to build strong relationships with suppliers. Financial constraints form somewhat of a formidable challenge, although here too, during the pandemic, the state directed the banks for the grant of moratoriums and low interest reliefs to meet the short-term liquidity needs such as working capital, which are critical for their survival. The important point in everything what we do is to maintain relevance. What we do or offer has to make sense to the receiver, and it should be unique to ensure continuous engagement. If not, our glory will be short-lived. With the vision to economically empower the women of Sri Lanka to be powerful nation builders by participating in transforming the economic growth of Sri Lanka, we at the Women's Chamber of Industry and Commerce in the pre and post-COVID-19 new normal are geared to conduct capacity building programs and events to engage, empower, and enrich women entrepreneurs on virtual platforms. Our incubator project, we jointly conduct with the Postgraduate Institute of Management, currently virtually, is solely to hold hand and guide through the women in startup businesses to assess them to create a brand. In a nutshell, adapt to the survive. Embracing the new and emerging opportunities is the key phrase in the new normal for the startups to be upcoming entrepreneurs. The new and emerging opportunities in the pre and post-COVID-19 could be made use of by today's increasing number of female and also male millennial undergraduates taken to entrepreneurship by setting up a business most times with scratch. The desire to work for oneself is a noticeable trait one comes across amongst the young people. This is heartening observation as entrepreneurs, especially the small and medium entrepreneurs, are drivers of the economic growth and job creation in a developing country. New and emerging opportunities are at our doorstep. All we need to do is to be strong, resilient, think outside the box, closely watch our surroundings and markets, research, be alert on the government decisions and bank facilities offered to the entrepreneurs with special facilities to women entrepreneurs. Thus, we should consider COVID-19 pandemic as a mere hurdle and use the pandemic to our best advantage to emerge as successful entrepreneurs in the new normal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. RANASINGHE. I would now like to call upon Mr. HEMINDA JAYAWEERA to present his interventions on social innovation and entrepreneurship. HEMINDA.
Thank you, Dr. Ranjith and Professor NADIRA and Professor Dias, the organizers. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. So today I will present about social innovation. Actually, it's not a, it's my own experience running two of, or being a part of two of the social innovation or startups in Sri Lanka. So I will start straight away sharing my screen. So about 3 years ago, I started a startup more on a very altruistic mode, looking at, so myself and my co-founder, both were hikers. So this is my journey about planting trees in Sri Lanka. So before going into that, the so-called Thuru startup, I will just explain a bit on, I think Dr. Bandula was touched on this innovation mindset. So this is one of the things that I'm really like when explaining about or understanding about the innovation mindset, especially to distinguish that between inventions and innovations. So one of the things that I see is that I think almost all of you have seen this cartoon. So in this cartoon, you see this coyote always try to make various gadgets that nobody has ever done. For example, rockets flying parallel to the earth. But at the end of the day, what you see is that he never achieved what he wants to do. He fails every time, or basically he never get what he wants to do. So what I see is that so the innovation, if you want to be really successful, or if you want to call innovation, you need to achieve what you have been trying to fulfill. For example, no point doing something new, and if it lies in the lab, for many years, there is no innovation. So for innovation to be successful, it has to be something new, yes, but then you have to fulfill what you wanted to achieve. And also it has to go on into the market. At least there should be one user. So this is something that I generally try to understand to demarcate the innovation. This has to go into the market. So to a simple thing, when we were hiking in somewhere close to Uva province, I used to see this waterfall about 10 years ago. And then by 2017, when we did the same hike, myself and my co-founder, we saw there was little amount of water compared to 10 years ago. So we realized this climate change is something inevitable. It will happen within your lifetime. So this social innovation, the idea behind social innovation is, again, it's innovation. The only difference is, of course, you can make profits. Social innovation is not about charity. It is also, you can make money out of it. You can make even a profit out of it. But the only difference is that it has to be on social good. And you have to make sure that ideally, I mean, if you are making profit, that profit should be go back into the cause that you are trying to fulfill. So under the same altruistic motive, but of course, we realize that if it is a social innovation, it can't be just a charitable mode. It is a sustainable model. So we came up with this idea of an app that, you know, it's not about just planting trees, because there are so many people planting trees globally, even in Sri Lanka, but we never see, even though how many trees we planted, whether we can actually see a transparency in that. So the app came into that. So basically, we have an app. You can plant a tree and you can upload that image onto the app. So now, this is 3 years later. Now we have about more than 50,000 trees onto the app. About 20,000 people download the app and they're using the app. So the idea is to give that traceability. So you plant a tree, not only about planting trees, that you can look after the tree as well. So basically we bring that transparency. There's a leaderboard, so people can plant more trees, get more points. Points are based on how many trees that you plant and also how long that you look after the plant. So basically you have to do 3 months, 6 months updates on your tree, put pictures, show the locations, so all that is supported by the app. And the people who get more points, we are bringing various non-monetary benefits, like for example, with one of the leading mobile operator, Mobitel, we have brought in free data for those people. And also there's a bank or a financial institution, LB Finance is offering reduced interest rate for loans. So likewise, we are bringing various non-financial or rather non-monetary benefits for people who are actually caring the nature. So in addition, what you have really I understood was basically this particular problem of solving the deforestation and accelerating reforestation cannot be done through just an app. So we started looking at the entire value chain, started bringing various solutions for each and every problem that we face in the value chain. So for example, one of the things that we saw was that the moment we started planting trees, we couldn't find the saplings. So we started talking to various people in the villages, to various segments, and started nurseries. So right now we have about 8 nurseries all around Sri Lanka. And at any given point, we can even supply more than 10,000 saplings. So that's one of the achievements that we have. And when we're doing that, we realized even the saplings is a bit of a difficult thing. For example, if you want to send saplings to various places, looking after them and all that. So then the idea of this seed pod, that actually one of the inventions of Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology. And basically this is a plant seed that you can send to any house. So the idea is to plant a plant to be sent to every household. And already we have sent about 20,000 such seed pods to Sri Lankan houses. So basically we have sent plants to more than 20,000 houses in the last couple of few months. So in addition, we were looking at, because this, when it comes to social innovation, you can't just look at in isolation, or also it as like a charity mode. So you have to look at various models to sustain it. And during COVID time, we realized that there was the enormous focus, even in Sri Lanka, plant your vegetables in your garden, and then there was the issue that even if you want to do it, you can't find various things, the seeds, the fertilizer. Then we realized there's a requirement. So we, through an organization, what we did was we started online store that supply anything that is required to plant a tree. So basically, starting from the seeds, plants, fertilizer, we are looking at only natural fertilizer, organic fertilizer, and also various other equipment, tools that you require in order to plant trees. So we are actually now, within last couple of months, we managed this, and now we have about 300 plus items in the store, and we do deliveries to a doorstep within Colombo district. So this is just a very short description about what TURU is for. We go with the tagline, accelerating reforestation using technology. So basically, we are bringing various technological solutions to accelerate reforestation, because Sri Lanka is known as one of the most highest country with one of the highest deforestation rates in the last 25 years. So we wanted to bridge that gap and make sure that we keep our forest cover as it is, at least. So the second, of course, we won in 2020, we won one of the 5 best mobile innovations for climate action in MWC Global Awards in Barcelona. That was just a couple of months ago. So that was like a icing on the cake of this product. And going into the second startup, which started with the same co-founder about 12 months ago. So we used to plant trees at this Karadiyana waste dump every year as part of TURU projects. And one of the things that we saw was that, this entire problem of plastic problem. So we realized, okay, we have done something for reforestation, why not start something for plastic problem as well? So that was the idea of Zero Trash. So Zero Trash idea was basically looking at a solution for Sri Lankan plastic problem. And we realized the plastic problem has so many issues. One is, of course, the people don't know the 3 R's: reuse, recycle, reduce. But more than that, there are huge education issue. But then we realized that's a problem that you can't solve as an individual. But then when we study the problem a bit more into recycling area, what we realized is that recycling is happening in Sri Lanka in various places. But then one of the biggest problems that we face is this transportation problem. So plastic is not a heavy item, but it's a volume. So even though you do all this plastic cleaning, ocean cleanup and all that, that plastic never goes to a recycler. So because there is no economic value in transporting the plastic that you collect to the recycler. So we came up with this model, whether we can come up with a model that we can do it in an economical or more viable way. So we started in 2019, early 2019, and we did 65, we collected 65 kilos of plastic and sent it to this recycler. We spent about 6,500 rupees and we got only 2,500 rupees. So basically about 20 to 30%, and the rest of the thing was a loss. So then we realized there's a huge problem here. So we started modeling the plastic collection and to the recycler. So today we are very happy. Of course, there's a bit of an issue with the COVID right now, but then up to this date, we have collected about 21 tons of plastic and sent it to recycling in Horana plant. And this is a plant that they make a yarn out of it, and that yarn is then given to various apparel companies to produce apparel, t-shirts and apparels. So up to COVID time, we were actually collecting about 2 tons of plastic per month. And still we are losing money. We are not profitable organization, but we know we are actually losing only about 10 to 20%. So that's a success rate from nearly 60% losses to we have improved to 10 to 20%. And we know we have a model now. If we increase up to about 10 tons a month, we have a break-even model. So it's our zero trash story. So I think the benefit of the time, I think I would like to stop it here. So basically the idea is it's about social innovation is about solving public problems that we face. We face, there may not be money or a lot of profit, but to make social entrepreneurial venture, you have to make profit. But of course, you can look at various methods so that whatever the profit also put back into the same cause. So thank you very much. I think.
Thank you, Heminda. Thank you for that journey. That's excellent. Yes. I would now like to call upon Mr. SHALEN De Silva, who will make a presentation on are you developing a vitamin or a painkiller for your users? SHALEN?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. Let me share my screen quickly. So, hi, I'm SHALEN De Silva. I'm co-founder and CEO of VIDYA Health. It's a US-based, very early stage telehealth startup trying to help people quit smoking and manage their chronic disease. I'm going to talk about innovation and commercialization through the lens of my own meandering life experience and journey, because that context I think is important, just to give you a real life window into what it's like to start a company and give you some real anecdotal tidbits. So I started out being a maths and finance grad from LSE and Cambridge, and joined Deloitte to become a chartered accountant. Worked in banking in London and Singapore for about 10 years actually, and in that time co-founded a medical outreach NGO called Global Clinic alongside a number of Singaporean doctors. We were providing free cataract and cleft palate surgeries across South and Southeast Asia. This was just a side gig while I was working in banking, but I was increasingly miserable in banking. I think I was unhappy because I was not able to be creative or express myself, and I didn't really see the point and purpose. And I was always like very close to my grandma in Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka and visits here at least twice a year was kind of a constant in my life. And when she passed away in 2016, it really triggered a set of deeper questions in me, wondering, what am I doing with my time? I don't want to squander the limited time we have on this planet doing things I don't care about. So, for me, health access and innovating to solve those problems in under-resourced situations was really my deeper why, and kind of alluding to what a lot of the speakers had talked about earlier. Finding that passion, finding that sense of purpose is really important when you go down this journey, because life is short, but the entrepreneurial journey is long and difficult, and it's hard to say no to things when your heart's not wholeheartedly in it. So I decided to sign up for a master's in public health at Harvard in 2017, and spent the next 2 years really diving into the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the innovation labs, and meeting like-minded people who have been instrumental in ultimately arriving at this startup very recently that we started a year ago. Just to give you a glimpse of what we do, smoking addiction and behavioral science has always been really fascinating to me. I'm fascinated by HEMINDA's amazing work and the app that he'd built. I see some gamification elements to it with the point systems and stuff, and I think those tools are really powerful with addressing behavior change. And to me, smoking, it's such a huge problem, even in the developed world. In the US, the US spends $170 billion every single year on smoking related health costs. And I just couldn't believe that this was the case in this day and age. And you know, I dove into a lot of the academic literature in the behavioral science space, particularly in contingency management. There's a lot of evidence around how incentives can promote better health behaviors, and there was a lot of science that was tested. But you know, when you're starting out an entrepreneurial venture that you intend to commercialize, you have to make sure that it's a real problem that real users in the real world are experiencing, and you have to stay close to that. So my co-founder Jake and I, we really wanted to get firsthand primary evidence from our users. We found smokers everywhere, from Craigslist to like targeted Facebook ads, standing around health clinics, speaking to over 150 different users, smokers, surveying them, getting their data. And we learned some very interesting things. We could kind of validate some of the basic assumptions that we had based on our desktop research, put some figures to it, learn what these people looked like, how much they earned, would they consider quitting for money. But as we all know, what we say isn't always what we do. And I think it's really important that we start with this analysis to direct our attention, but also test out real world scenarios and observe people from a distance as they interact with your products. And to do that, you have to come up with really cheap, simple prototypes of your solution to put in people's hands as quickly as possible, but as cheaply as possible, to get answers to those questions you might have about their behaviors. So slowly, iteratively, we worked out sort of creative ways of experimenting. We bought a device that can measure how much you're smoking, a carbon monoxide device that we bought from a third party. We put it in, we gave it to a bunch of smokers. We said to them, if you blow into this device and you send us a screenshot, text it to us on WhatsApp, and if your score is below this amount, we'll pay you this amount of money through a digital payment, peer-to-peer payment platform called Venmo in the US. So we didn't have to build any tech for that. We were able to, you know, create this very low-tech experiment to see how people behaved. And just through that, we got a lot of insights. You know, people were, they had preferences on timing. They kind of cared less about the money and more about like the kind of encouragement and the words that you're using. You're able to kind of inform the product a lot before you go out and actually start spending money on software development. So those lo-fi tests are super important, but slowly we kind of started to improve the product, get it in more people's hands, keep going back and forth, learning from our users how they were interacting with it, ask a lot of open-ended questions, don't assume anything, especially when you're dealing with a population that is kind of different to you, lower socioeconomic end of the demographic spectrum. They are often blue-collar workers. You have to sort of be very empathetic and very patient in observing how they behave. And at the same time, if you're commercializing a product, you have to think about the business model. In healthcare, there's a lot of stakeholders involved, and we know that none of us actually want to pay for preventative measures. It's very rare to actually have a successful healthcare product, which requires the end user to actually pay for it. So in the US, a lot of the healthcare medical bills are borne by, you know, employers and health insurers. The employers actually are a big market. They pay for the medical bills of their employees, and that's a common way to sell wellness products. But what we learned in real life by, again, testing those assumptions and hitting the pavement, speaking to as many people as possible, we learned that it makes sense on paper that employers, if they're paying for the medical bills, they'd like to get their employees to be healthier. But in reality, the people making the decisions within these organizations are not the people who are suffering the financial pain. What we were trying to pitch to them was a vitamin, as I call it. It was something that was a nice to have, but when budgets get tight, you know, this is the first kind of thing that gets taken off their spend. And the pain point really isn't there, because smoking isn't their core business. They don't care about the smoking problem as much as just offering a one-stop shop solution. So we learned from shadowing tobacco treatment specialists in the clinical setting that this is really where the pain lies. And we were able to focus our attention on the healthcare side and really redirect the product based on that constant iteration and constant user feedback, and make sure that the clinicians weren't burdened with extra work, we took on the challenge of providing the counseling, providing not just the tech tool, but the services elements as well to what we're offering, and saw the importance that a human counselor offers. So we needed to adapt the product to accommodate a human counselor in the loop. So what we ended up with is this purely virtual platform. We send out a quit kit to our users. They get a breathalyzer device and an app. They blow into the device, can see how much they're smoking, and we pay them real-time financial incentives measured by their smoking behavior. Also, there's a facial recognition tool that validates it's really them. And we get to see their daily smoking behavior on our dashboard every single day, and the counselors are able to respond in real time and really provide that proactive care. So this evolution of the product comes a long way from where we started, but it's that iteration and that constant experimentation that I think is key to our success. And we were lucky to win the Harvard President's Innovation Challenge this year, which is a great kind of validation for us of all the hard work. And you know, what you don't see is the countless hours of failures and failed experiments and the rejections that we've got before all of this. And you know, ultimately, we've also been lucky to be part of these accelerator programs. I think in the US, they do a really great job of incubating young startups and accelerating ideas with access to mentors and investors. And you know, I'm really passionate about bringing this to Sri Lanka, bringing this expertise and encouraging entrepreneurship in Sri Lanka, because it's really like an amazing space where people with the imagination, with the talent, that they can really express themselves and make a really direct impact on their society. So I'd love to take any questions.
Thank you, Shalen. I think we have a few questions for the three panelists. I would just try to, well, I think the three panelists can choose the question. This is one. The first one is that is the socio-cultural background of Sri Lankan researchers causing disinterest in entrepreneurship, converting research to business? I think this is a question that any one of you can respond to. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take that. I think Dr. Bandula also, I think,
yes,
answered this to a certain level. I think I'll just open it up to the next level. So basically, one of the things that we see in Sri Lankan education system starting, I mean, the key problem that we face is from the start to the end, from scholarship exams to O-levels to A-levels, is a highly individualistic education system that we have. So we don't really go into this the teamwork. I think luckily, I think I have a 5-year-old son now, and now I realize that at school level it has started changing. So there is a lot of teamwork is now looked at, so which is really good. But in our generation, I think, or maybe even our older generation, we never had this teamwork in our blood. So basically, the researchers or the people who are highly educated, it's a long battle. It's an individualistic the battle. But then when it comes to innovation, it's about teamwork, because innovation is not about just technology. It's not about science. It's about a lot of other things. You have to look at the finance side. You have to look about legal side. You have to look at so many things that none of single person can be an expert on all these areas. So basically, you have to look at either you are an expert in all these areas, which is very difficult, but much better model is to become, get that expertise that you don't have. For example, if you are a technologist and if you want to market a product, you teamed up with a marketeer, or you bring your co-founder from the marketing side, or you bring a co-founder that you don't have. So I think that I would say it's a mindset change.
Thank you.
That is required.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have another question. We have two more questions. Should our academic qualifications necessarily related to the areas of our interest in entrepreneurship? One of you can respond to it, but maybe Shalen. No, Shalen, do you like to respond to this? Because you are different. Yes.
I'm happy to take this, just because I've found so much value in being an outsider, in coming to the healthcare space with a completely different perspective, having lived in other countries, having worked in finance, and I think solving difficult problems isn't a single disciplinary issue. It's a multidisciplinary approach that's always needed to solve difficult problems. And when you have as broad an experience in life that's potentially completely unrelated to academic experiences or qualifications, I think it gives you insights into how humans behave, and ultimately that's what it comes down to in solving real problems.
Right. Great. Thank you.
Can I add on to what Shalen said?
Yes,
I think
yes. Yeah.
the closest academic subject in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship is, as Shalen said, it's psychology. So when it comes to, it's a human resource. So you have to look at a problem in a very human-centric way. So I don't know how many subjects, how many degree courses in Sri Lanka teaches that. So without that, I think I would say we are not producing, enough innovators if you don't teach that area.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we have the third question. What are the strategies that you would suggest for a new entrepreneur to save his or her business from the possible financial crisis usually occur during or after? I think this is for Chathuri. Chathuri, would you like to respond to this?
Yes. Yes, I'll take it. So in a pandemic, you cannot panic. You have to especially manage your cash management, which is the utmost, because you have to think how you are going to survive, how you are going to pay your staff. So you have to manage your cash extremely with caution. Then the next thing is to keep your customers happy and keep them with you, and not allow them to move away. So you have to keep talking to them. Then the next comes your employees. So you may be finding difficult to pay your salaries. You have to keep the employees happy and get them to join in with you as for how you can come out of this. And then also look at the financial financials offered by the banks. Because at these times, even in our this time in the pandemic, the banks came up, the central bank made the banks offer moratoriums, that is to in respect of the loans, the relief, and also relief as with a very low percentage of interest and repayable in 2 years' time. So you have to look out for all those things. And even perhaps changing space, or the most important thing is maybe even to diversify or to pivot into another area where it is in demand. I think those are the most salient areas one has to consider.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a question for HEMINDA, a loaded question. How important is having hiking partners for innovation?
Yeah, I think it's so idea is basically I don't know anything about trees, although I started a startup on trees, and even my hiking partner also into technology. So, but the important thing is that we both has similar altruistic motives of doing something back to the nature. So I think that's where we both had we saw a problem to solve. So I think the real entrepreneurial spirit comes when you see a problem that not only yourself but your partner but the entire community face. So I think so as co-founders we had that similar view about solving this problem. I think that's where why hiking partners were important.
And the trust.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Right. I think we will have one more question, and Yeah, the second question is risk taking is not in Sri Lankan blood. Entrepreneurship requires risk taking. How would you get a change in attitude in scientists? I think again, any one of you could respond to this. It's not particularly directed to a speaker.
Can I take it first?
Yeah.
In my opinion, yes, of course, in the Sri Lankan blood, risk taking is not there for the reason we grow up in a background where our parents make us move on to academic lines. Nobody says, why don't you do this business? All they say is become a doctor, lawyer, and push you onto this scientific line. And then you go into academics, then you do your higher studies, and you do not want to come out of your comfort zone. So entrepreneur is a person who takes a risk to make profit. So you have to have that in you to take that challenge.
Would you say that, Shalen and Heminda, would you have a different view or?
Shall I go? Shall I?
Yeah. Yeah.
Please, I can share as well afterwards.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's about, I mean, I see even in Silicon Valley, we see entrepreneurs as hustlers. So basically people are trying to, all the time on the move, trying to do something. So even when the COVID came, I think one of the main income earner for Turu was actually we organized tree planting events and supported by various corporates. So that was our main, the money making model. But then that we had to stop because you can't gather people now. It's COVID time, no more events. So we had to look at the entire problem of the coming up with earning money in an entirely different way. So that's why we came up with the model of the online store model, which we developed within about 2 to 3 weeks time. And today we earn more money than we used to earn before COVID. So actually COVID was actually, I shouldn't say this, but COVID was better for us in terms of Turu.
Right. Thank you. I think we just have time for one more last question.
I would add, Ranjit, if I may, just regarding the risk-taking point.
Please. Yeah.
I think that the mentality is kind of common across countries. You take risks, proportionate to like your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and if you have your basic needs covered and you have the luxury and privilege to really take bigger risks, then there's more innovation that's possible. I think in Silicon Valley and in the US, there's like a lot of privilege and resources available, which I'm also lucky to have had because of the sacrifices my parents have made.
Right.
And it's not easy, and I completely empathize with the founders in Sri Lanka who have great ideas and great potential, but have more real life considerations to think about. And I think bridging that gap really comes down to, facilitating more resources, more kind of buffer for them to take more risks so that there's a cushion to land on. For example, like extending advice, extending mentorship, finding ways to finance their activities, and being okay with the risk of failure, having risk-taking investors participate in that. So there's a lot that can be done.
Right. Great. Last question. Does Sri Lanka have the culture of venture capitalists and incubator fund providers? I think, again, we can answer this question quickly. Heminda, I think you have...
Yeah. So venture capitalist is, unfortunately, it's not available in Sri Lanka. One of the big reasons is that we don't have this so-called the model, the legal model that you see in US and maybe Israel and various other countries, like the limited partner, the model. So there are few venture capitalists working in operating in Sri Lanka, but actually their companies are either in Singapore or the Middle East. But the good thing about Sri Lanka is actually we have loads of now. This was not the case about a few years back or many, but today we have a lot of angel investors. So basically this is people, individuals who have money. So venture capital is a different model. It's a venture capital is somebody invest money of somebody else's money. So they act as, you know, they collect money with various partners. But compared to maybe 10 years back, we have a lot of angel investors in Sri Lanka. I think that's the model that we have to look at. And also when it comes to incubator fund and the various accelerators and incubators have, you know, increased over the past 10 years. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, compared to maybe Silicon Valley, we are far away, but there are a lot of opportunities coming out now. I think it's good to become entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka now.
Yeah, can I add on to that, please?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Just briefly.
We have something a little similar to this venture capital, where this Attaura program, where entrepreneurs are brought in, it is a TV show where entrepreneurs are brought in, and then they look into their thing, and the investor comes in and invests. It is similar to venture capital investors, but not exactly, but we are coming to that. And as regards incubators, there are many incubators. In fact, we run our chamber, we run an incubator with the Postgraduate Institute of Management, and there are several others who run incubators to hold hand with the startups and take them through the journey to scale up.
Thank you. Thank you, Chathuri. I think we will now move on to the second session of the panel discussion. I would like to invite Mr. DEEPAL De Silva from Sampath Bank, who will speak to us on empowering scientists through entrepreneurship, the role of financial institutions. DEEPAL.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Professor NADIRA KARUNAWEERA, President of Sri Lanka National Chapter of the Organization for Women in Science for Developing World, for inviting Sampath Bank, and also for kind introduction made by Dr. RANJITH MAHINDAPALA. I am privileged to be a part of this webinar where I can share my knowledge and experience with you all. In today's challenging world, women entrepreneurship has been recognized as an important source of economic growth and as an effective method to achieve a democratic society based on women's empowerment and gender equality values. If you compare today's world with 10-15 years ago, women are heading the boards of blue chip companies, and also some major institutions are chaired by women. Sampath Bank PLC, established in Sri Lanka, is having an asset base over 1 trillion LKR. And two major secrets behind the success is: one, in terms of technology, we are the #1, not only in Sri Lanka, in the South Asian region. And number two, if I connect to today's event, we develop small scale entrepreneurs to national level big corporates. Now I will come to my topic, how scientists can be an entrepreneur. And in order to achieve, what is the role of financial institutions? We see what are the challenges we are facing today. One is lack of financial literacy and negotiation skills. Two, tight procedural requirements of banks and other organizations. Low risk taking ability. Lack of business know-how, especially in current trends. Tough competition with large units, providing collaterals. We see how we are going to overcome these challenges and what is the role of bank to empower women entrepreneurships. Bank offers financial and non-financial services to women entrepreneurs to obtain their active participation for economic development. Sampath Bank offers Sampath Xavier. It's an entrepreneurship development program. A savings account named as Ladies One savings account, and also a separate loan scheme named as Sampath VIDYA. And for exporters, we have Export House Loan Scheme, and also for other personal needs like leasing facilities, housing facilities, and personal advances. What is Sampath Xavier? It's an entrepreneurship development program, delivers versatile learning and development solutions on entrepreneurship, such as preparation of business proposals, direction for technical training, inculcate financial discipline, and business counseling. We offer a savings account called Ladies First Savings Account. It's a unique savings account from Sampath Bank for modern Sri Lankan women with a promise of more financial freedom and convenience. The key benefits are higher interest rate than the normal savings, branded passbook and branded Visa debit card, investment plans up to 5 years. We have a separate loan scheme called Sampath VIDYA. This scheme is designed exclusive for export-oriented entrepreneurs to finance initial capital or working capital requirements of new business entities, individuals, or enhancement of existing projects. The amount of the loan and interest rates are the minimum amount is 10 million and maximum amount is 100 million. The interest rate is 9%. The repayment period for capital loans 120 months with a grace period of 12 months, and for working capital loans 60 months with a grace period of 6 months. Also, we have an export house loan scheme for exporters. This offers export-related financial solutions and consultancy services in one convenient place. Under financial services, we offer assistance in every aspect of your business. The financial products include like packing credit loans, working capital loans, infrastructure development loans. Also under non-financial services, we offer assisting in finding new export markets, providing information related to trade finance, establishing links with key government organizations, advisory services in value additions to the products, directing for support services like insurance, packaging, and freight forwarding. Also, like other services, we offer for vehicle purchases like leasing facilities. For housing, we have housing loan facilities. Also, we have gold loans and personal loans for personal needs and overdrafts for working capital facilities. So that's conclude my presentation. We have 229 branches all over Sri Lanka. So I invite all of you to experience the banking services of Sampath Bank. Finally, I would like to thank the organizers for organizing a timely needed this kind of an event, identifying the national need and giving an opportunity to Sampath Bank to make you all aware of our products and services. Wish you all the very best and good luck in your future endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deepal. We will take the questions at the end of this session after two more presentations.
Yes.
I would now like to, we have now two interventions by the government sector which supports research and development. I'd like to invite Mr. Janaka Karunasena from the National Science Foundation to speak on the technology grants. Janaka, please.
Thank you, Dr. Mahindapala. Good evening, and ladies and gentlemen. I'm Janaka from the National Science Foundation. I must thank at the beginning to Professor NADIRA, KARUNAWEERA, and Dr. Hermail De Silva for providing this excellent opportunity to make aware the Sri Lankan scientists on the technology grant scheme of the National Science Foundation. I'm going to add a drop of information which may be useful to you, especially to the Sri Lankan scientists. In the Q&A session after Dr. Shalane's speech, it was raised a question on financial risk. And during the speech of Dr. BANDULA VIJAY, he specially emphasized the skills and funds, importance of funds when dealing with innovations. So I'm going to tell you something about these things. Let me share my presentation. Right. Before telling you something about this technology grants, let me tell you something about the National Science Foundation. It is actually a statutory institute or semi-government organization. Presently comes under the purview of the Ministry of Education and Technology and Innovation. It is fully dependent on treasury funds. I must repeat that NSF is fully dependent on treasury funds. This is a premier organization providing financial support to the scientific community since 1968, because it was established as National Science Council in 1968. Then it was converted into Natural Resources, Energy and Science Authority, that means NARESA, in 1982. And then when it was 16 years old for this NARESA, it was converted into National Science Foundation. So as a premier organization, scientific organization which provide financial support, NSF has launched several grant schemes to the scientific community, namely Technology Grant Scheme, Competitive Research Grants, Postdoctoral Fellowship Grants, Postgraduate Research Scholarships, Research Equipment Grants, International Travel Grants, Overseas Special Training Program, International Science and Technology Partnership for Science and Technology, Science Education and Popularization Program, Overseas Science Education Program, NSF Grant Scheme for Promoting Science and Technology Publications, and finally, funding page charges for research papers. Those are the main key areas of grants if launched by the National Science Foundation. So my topic is Technology Grant Scheme, talking about technology grant schemes. This has two branches. One is Technology Development Grants. The other one is Startup Grants. When we talk about Technology Development Grants or TechD grants, TechD grants provide financial support for development of new technologies. In other words, conversion of the concept into a prototype or process, and for promoting technology transfer. When we look at the objectives of this scheme, they are to encourage scientists, researchers, engineers, technologists, inventors to become active partners in the innovation process. Then to encourage the obtaining intellectual property rights and to promote technology transfer. These technology Tech-D grants we provide to the state sector, non-state sector, and individuals. In case of state sector, there are universities and research institutes. Non-state sector, small and medium companies, and individuals, those who are interested in invention, those are inventors, technologists, etc. Tech-D grants are usually provided for research work from 1 to 3 years. Some of the grants duration is 1 year, some may be 2 to 3 years. But we are not encouraging extensions for these grants, but due to some reasons which are uncontrollable or beyond the control of the grantees or the National Science Foundation, we consider extension for these grants. Tech-D grants, when considered the funding, state sector is fully funded, but non-state sector and individuals are partially funded. We provide 50 to 70% of project costs to these two sectors. In case of state sector, applicants can apply for funds for research students, technical assistant, and laborers, but not for overhead expenses like salaries. But in case of non-state sector and individuals, we don't provide funds for research students and overhead expenses, but they can apply for TAs and laborers. When we talk about second branch, startup grants for startups, these startup grants are provided for starting the initial business stage of a company. Or in other words, we provide seed funds to start a company. When we look at the objectives, these startup grants are provided to support conversion of research outputs by universities and research institutes into marketable products or services, and thereby to encourage scientists, researchers, and engineers from universities and research institutes to become successful entrepreneurs, and to encourage establishment of new technology-based firms by state and non-state sector organizations and individuals, and to promote commercialization of new technologies. So startup grants applicants should actually identify roadmap for commercialization. Then these grants are once again like Tech-D grants. We provide these grants to universities and research institutes, small and medium companies, and individuals. Not like Tech-D grants, the time period is limited for 1 year in case of startup grants. Once again, state sector is fully funded. Non-state sector and individuals are partially funded. They can apply 1 grant at a time. In case of startup, more than 10 million SLR are not encouraged. So this fund they can use to purchase equipment, fabricate equipment, consumable items, and consultancies on developing a business plan, market survey, and design and fabrication. The way of apply or application procedure is to usually NSF advertise these grants along with other grants in the national newspapers and publish in the NSF website. Sometimes you can see on the TV news line, usually we advertise this in the first quarter of the year. Before winding up, I must say something about this grant. Because these grants and funds are free money, not loans. You don't have to repay these funds. Therefore, you should have to concentrate on delivering of tangible outputs of successful startup businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Janaka. I would now like to call upon Manisha Rajapaksa, make a short presentation on why we need public-private partnership in science, technology, and innovation. Manisha.
Thank you, Dr. Mahindapala. Greetings from National Research Council of Sri Lanka to everyone. National Research Council is also a state sector organization. And let me share my slides with you. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Can you see, right? Okay.
Try to do it full screen.
Full screen. Can you make it full screen? Yeah.
The bottom left hand or bottom right hand actually?
Stop sharing.
Manisha, you can stop sharing and try again.
Presentation mode.
Okay, Ms. Manisha Rajapaksa, I will share it from remotely.
No, I think it's quite got it. Okay.
Okay.
So my topic is why we need private-public partnership in science, technology, and innovation. First of all, I should say this COVID-19 virus has taught us one lesson, that is there aren't any boundaries between countries, within countries, or when it comes to a social, economic, or environmental issue. It has given us new challenges and it has made us think differently. So as Chathuri said, there are so much changes have been happening during this period. And when we take the Sri Lankan context into consideration, last July we were an upper middle income country, and by this July the World Bank has downgraded us to a lower middle income country. So obviously our economy is not doing too well. When we take how our economy is contributed, the GDP is contributed mainly by the service sector, then by the industries and the agriculture sector. There is so much of innovative research then that can be done in all these sectors to contribute towards the national economy. And when I say there's so much of opportunities, I think all the previous speakers mentioned the opportunity that has come about in this pandemic situation. The multinational companies are all reassessing their global value chain. So I think there is plenty of opportunities there to do R&D. Digitization is a must. It's no longer an option for us. Everything is now becoming so digitizing, even ordering your food or meals or anything of that sort. And even today's webinar is that we were to have a one-day session, but it got converted to a webinar today, and it's so much different for us. Then there is demand for new products, diversification of exports. Now, Sri Lanka Export Development Board has come up with 6 prime areas where they're going to concentrate. Just naming a few, they're on electronic components, electrical components, processed food, spices, concentrates, shipbuilding, and wellness tourism. So now in all these sectors, again, there's so much of R&D that can be done and should be done. Then the last one is exploiting the import substitute. In Sri Lanka, I think the government has sort of withheld some imports for us. So I think it is time that scientists and the private sector start thinking how we can come up with import substitutes for this. So all this shows that there's plenty of opportunities for us to do innovative R&D. Taking the National Research Council by mandate, we have been solicited to get the cooperation of the private sector to do more and more R&D work in science and technology. So this is how the private-public partnership of the NRC came into light. The public-private partnership forms partnerships between private sector and the public sector to do more demand-driven research that will contribute to the national economy. Also, it will get the private sector to invest more in research and development. In Sri Lanka, the investment in research and development is very low. And even within that, the investment in the private sector is also low. It's about 30% of the total investment in R&D. In countries like Singapore, I think it's about 70% where the private sector invests. So this program will get the private sector also to invest in the program, and their investment will increase. The last one is it will translate public research knowledge to private sector usage, which is very low in Sri Lanka. By this program, what do we fund? We fund any research leading to development of new products, processes, services, or any value addition. It can be a technology transfer or solving technical problems of relevant industries. So this program will take up any of these new developments. And who can be the partners of this program? Public sector, it will be the universities, research institutes, or any other state organization. Private sector will be private companies. We have many public enterprises in Sri Lanka, any of them can be partners, and the SMEs. Talking a little bit, some highlights about the program. I don't want to go into details about this program because it's all on our website. We advertise twice a year. Funding is considered for anything from prototype, from idea to prototype, or from prototype to product commercialization, or through the whole process. So anyone can sort of fit into any of these things. Total cost of the project is shared equally between the private sector and the NRC. So we bear 50% of the total cost of the project, and private sector has to put 50% of the cost. Funds are provided for equipment, pilot plant, consumables, travel, allowances, and there is a research fee for the scientists also. Then the intellectual property is shared between the 3 parties, and NRC is at the moment developing an interactive web platform for industries and researchers so that we can sort of fast track the entire process. What are the benefits of this program? It will have access to access to local scientists, scientific expertise, and infrastructure by the private sector. It will also optimize the usage of resources by sharing facilities, by sharing human resources, cost, and knowledge. It will also share the responsibilities and the risk. As it was discussed, there is risk in R&D, so this risk NRC is willing to share with the private sector. And of course, in any issue, NRC also will get sort of intervene and try to assist to resolve any issue that comes across. Then product commercialization by the industries also is possible. because what happens in Sri Lanka is there's products developed in the university research institute, but it doesn't get on to the industries. Private sector to undertake research in areas outside their core business. If somebody in the food sector wants to do some research in rubber sector, they can always, sort of without taking too much of risk, they can apply for one of our grants and see whether they can make some success in the program. There is tax benefit to the private sector to invest in R&D, training of scientists of private sector and the scientists, and there is creation of new jobs in this program. And I will just run through some of the projects we have handled, so people who are watching can get an idea to what type of programs we have sort of funded so far. This is one of the first programs we funded. This is a locally developed respiratory care product. The public partner was from the University of Sri Lanka, and public partner was from Dina Manufacturing Private Limited. So they developed the nasal spray, which was initially, it was an imported product, but now we have a low cost nasal spray available in the market. And this company has started paying us royalty, and so we are very happy to say that NASSL has started earning money of its own. This is another project we have funded. Fruit fly is a problem for our farmers. So this project came up with a little pellet that attracts the fruit fly. The public partner of the Industrial Technology Institute, and the private partner was the CIC Holdings. This pellet is developed by a plant called Madhurthara. The name of the product is Baska. And in this case, we license the commercialization part to a third party. So this is another scenario we had. Sort of like we could even license without the company taking over the commercial production. They had licensed to the third party. This is commercial extraction of agar-wood resin from Wallapatta and nursery establishment. Agar-wood resin has a huge demand in the fragrance industry, and it's a very expensive resin. The public partner was again University of Sri Lanka, and public partner is Sadahatta Plantation Private Limited. The only thing is this resin, when they were trying to export it, there were some legal issues, legislative issues that has sort of prevent them from exporting, but NARC as a state organization at the moment is involved in trying to resolve this issue for the private sector. This is where a material to improve the electric conductivity of natural rubber compound for non-marking solid tires was investigated, and they found some nanomaterials to be incorporated into the rubber. These solid tires are used for hospital beds and sort of trolleys, what we use in the supermarkets or at the airports. So this company again will take up the commercialization, and it's this Elastomeric Engineering Private Limited. It's connected to one of the leading rubber manufacturing international companies. So the research has been completed. The products will come onto the market very soon, I think. This is another project we have handled. It's a substitute to conventional roofing sheets using natural rubber and polyethylene, and it's we are using waste material for polyethylene. The private partner was University of Moratuwa, and public partner is DSI's Samsung's Compound Private Limited. We have finished with the prototype. Really, this project came when asbestos was banned in Sri Lanka, so they have come up with an alternative roofing sheet. So the product is completed, the project has just completed, and the private company and the public and the partners have to come to us and discuss with us what they want to do next. This is a project done by the TRI, a self-cleaning swifter with multi-mesh. frame for grading long leafy and wiry type tea. Now for the tea industry, cleaning this mesh takes a lot of labor. So this from this research, they came up with a multi frame mesh. It's a prototype machinery, and they will not need any labor. It will automatically clean the mesh at the end of the day. And we believe the machinery is being tested at the TRI at the moment in their factories. And we believe the tea plantation sector will take up this machinery, and they have intentions of even exporting this. The last one I would like to discuss is completely a different scenario. It was a treatment for post-harvest disorders and diseases affecting mango varieties. The public partner was National Institute of Fundamental Studies. Private partner is Ellawala Horticulture Private Limited. And this project is also almost completed. They have found treatment for this post-harvest disorders and diseases. And we have many other projects going on construction industry, drone technology. Then we also have things on applications, computer applications. I would like to take this opportunity to invite our scientists as well as the private sector to join hands with us and get on, sort of use this facility that the government is offering to do more R&D work, so that sort of you can get so much of facilities by this program. So get connected with the NRC and apply for this program. Lastly, I would like to thank the OWSD for giving me this opportunity to speak about the public-private partnership of the National Research Council. And thank you, Dr. Mahindapala.
Thank you, Manisha.
Vishwa, we introduced Sri Lanka to a complete online solution that complements the busy lifestyle of today. Our Sampath Vishwa retail facility offers customers a world of convenience, where all their banking needs just a click away. While our Vishwa corporate facility offers smooth and efficient online banking solutions for all types of businesses. When it comes to modern banking, we at Sampath Bank remain committed to staying ahead of our time, providing a world of innovative online banking solutions today, tomorrow, and into the future.
Thank you, DEEPAL, Janaka, and Manisha for the 3 presentations. Although we are behind schedule, it's not my fault, actually. It started late. But we have few interesting questions which we would like to share with you. The first questions are for the bank. Let me share the questions. Deepal, would you like to answer the question? Would you be able to elaborate on conversion of one or two scientific developments to businesses that the bank has supported?
Actually, we cannot give some examples because those are some sort of a confidential information.
All right.
But definitely, yes, as a bank, we cannot give information to the public and third parties. But definitely, we have developed and we have given our hands to help the entrepreneurs to develop their businesses during the past 33 years of banking to come up to the level of national level.
Thank you. The next question is also for the bank.
Yes, doctor.
Yeah, one more. we have a small business administration like in the USA, where banks will provide loans to businesses but are guaranteed by the federal government, meaning the national government.
Yes. Against the guarantee of the government, we are giving facilities. Even during this period, there is a special guarantee scheme introduced by the central bank to give facilities to the customers against the central bank guarantee.
Thank you. NFS, whilst there's a significant contribution for supporting research, does NFS try to proactively identify potential research which can be developed to a business and support such initiatives? Janaka, would you like to respond to this?
Yeah, actually, after completion of competitive research grants, we identify some potential grants for commercialization and other startup businesses. But the thing is that when we contact them, the researchers, the response rate is very less. For example, last year, we identified 10 grants, and ultimately only one researcher was willing to apply for a startup grants. So there's that factor also there. And then
I think that's a very, very important finding, that perhaps NFS would like to look at why that situation arose, why they are not willing to take up your offer.
The thing is that, as mentioned in earlier presentations, that may be their mindset. And most of the researchers do not have idea or skills of entrepreneurship, because we are looking, if they want to apply for startup grants, they should find a private sector collaborator. And there are some rules and regulations also in the universities, and government rules and regulations. So then those do not allow to enter into this commercialization culture. Sometimes they have their own UBLs established, around 10 UBLs with the universities. And this may be the reason some people are satisfied with the final research without going for commercialization.
All right. Thank you. There's a question here. The university system has established university business linkage, UBL cells, to support entrepreneurship, patenting, etc. Any panelists would like to comment on the performance of these cells? Academics?
I think, yeah. Can I just, I'm not very familiar, but I know something about the UBL cells. I think through this AHEAD project, they are developing the UBL cells in most universities. And I think it's a good initiative, because it will really give some assistance to the researchers to take the research there onwards, right? To commercialize it. I think they're giving a lot of sort of assistance in how to doing the business plan, and then sort of about the IP rights and things like that. So I think it's a good initiative. I think, but only thing is, other than the University of Colombo, others are not very been established sort of rather recently.
Oh, okay.
So, but I think University of Colombo, the UBL, they had done quite a bit of work and they are doing well. I think that was the model they used for the other universities.
And I think this is started quite recently, I believe.
Yes, that's what it started.
Yeah,
so I think, but it's a good initiative, I think, because this will also encourage the university researchers sort of, and as Janaka said, change of mindset is very important, right? So I think this will assist. that entire change in the universities.
Dr. Mahendra, I think, I think University of Moroto also functioning well. They have established this UBL and incubators also. I came to know that they are also functioning well as Institute of Colombo.
Okay. The next question is for both NFS and NRC. Technology grants and private-public partnership grants, what percentage have been successful? I know Manisha was talking about some, but how is success measured? And are failures tolerated as part of the risk taking? Manisha or Janaka, you can both respond.
Can I respond first?
Yeah, sure.
Now, when somebody comes for a private-public partnership, when they apply for one of these grants, we ensure that all necessary facilities and the resources are there for them to complete it successfully, right? Of course, halfway through, some of the 1 or 2 projects could run into problems, but NRC is always there for us to sort of intervene. And I mean, at the beginning of the project, they give us what their final outcome is, right? Output is, we are not expecting any publications in this case. So we always try to ensure that the outputs are given, because a private partner has already invested in this project, right? And they also want a success out of this project. Okay. So it is, I think the success rate in the PPP programs are good. And we also sort of keep on monitoring what is happening, and whenever there is an issue, sort of we also get, we also intervene and sort of try to assist them.
Thank you. Thank you. And there's a last, well, another question. Industry investment for research in Sri Lanka is minimal. Is there anything that can be done to make the industries more enthusiastic? Any particular panelists who would like to, including Chathuri, HEMINDA, and SHALEN? No takers?
It's Dr. Mahendapala, now in Sri Lanka, of the R&D investment is very low, and of that about 30% is given by, it's given sort of on record, it's about 30% by the private sector. Now that is quite low when you compare to countries like Singapore, we are doing very well. The private sector invests about 70%. So I think we have to do more and more to get them invest in R&D, but this program is getting them to invest, because already the investment they have done with NRC comes to about, I would say, something between 75 to 100 million for all the programs we have handled so far. So I hope we can increase our numbers and get private sector to sort of invest more, but at the same time, maybe some other initiatives should start to get private sector to get into more innovative R&D.
Right, right.
Maybe HEMINDA is there, he can also comment, and he's also private sector and public sector partnership programs.
Okay.
I think
we have, sorry, we have just 2 more questions further because we are running out of time, and me just take that. There are 2 questions. Can a private company from Nepal have a collaboration in implementing research work in Sri Lanka? If yes, I would like to know. I think this is more perhaps for NRC and
in fact, I was thinking that this type of question would come, right? So why not write to us and we'll see the possibilities. There's nothing to say. Right. I don't want to say no to it, right? Why not work? Because, for example, the rubber project we have with Elastomeric, the mother company is an international company. So I think I would like if they can write to us and we can take it there onwards.
All right. The next question is what are the strategies that you would map out to establish much needed nexus among the government, the scientific community, and the business community? Is there any particular strategy that either the state sector or the private sector has brought out? Any elucidation on that? Well, since there is no response to that question, we will just keep it aside and maybe try to support it later on. I would now again like to thank the 6 panelists for their excellent interventions and for the clarity of their presentations and for the clarifications that they brought for the table. Thank you all. And I would like to hand over the proceedings to Dr. Hermail De Silva, Secretary of the Sri Lanka Chapter of the Organization for Women in Science for Developing World, to propose a vote of thanks. Hermail.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahindapala. That brings us to the end of this webinar. On behalf of the Sri Lanka National Chapter of the WIJAY, I would like to thank Dr. SHAHANI Markus, Vidya JYOTHI, Dr. BANDULA VIJAY, the chairs and panelists for joining us today. Our sponsor, Sampath Bank, and our event manager, Mr. Duminda Koralagamage, and his team at the International Institute of Knowledge Management, who contributed to making this webinar a reality. The Executive Committee of the Sri Lanka National Chapter of the OWSD for organizing this webinar, and the National Academy of Sciences, Sri Lanka, for the unwavering support. And a special thank you to all the attendees who have joined us from over 25 countries. Hope you enjoyed this webinar. Lastly, I would like to request you to answer a few feedback questions which will appear on the screens after you log out. A pleasant evening to everyone in and around Sri Lanka, and a good day to the rest of you. Thank you.